Hello, and we're back! I am back with another book video. This video is going to be kind of both a book review and me talking about cystic fibrosis. So, from that intro, if you didn't know what I was going to talk about, you probably can now. We're going to talk about 5 Feet Apart. And I know I'm a little late to the game. I read this already actually months ago, and I've already seen it in theaters like the weekend it came out, but I wasn't doing YouTube then. And I figured this would be a good excuse to do both a book review and talk about CF in the same video. 2 birds, 1 stone. Part of the reason I'm doing this video now, even though, you know, this isn't a new book anymore, is because I was going to write a blog post about it and kind of my thoughts on it as a CFer, and that just never happened. Because I wrote a blog post about my fears about the book and the movie, which I will link down below if you want to read that, but I never actually wrote the post about post-seeing the movie and reading the book and how I felt about it all. But I read the book before the movie came out, which I'm really glad I did, even though the book itself, so what came first was the screenplay, and then the book, and then the movie. So technically speaking, you could say the movie came first, because the screenplay for the movie was the first thing, and then the book, and then the movie actually came out. But if you don't know what 5 Feet Apart is, it came out earlier this year starring Cole Sprouse and Haley Lou Richardson, and it's about 2 kids with CF who fall in love. When the movie was announced, everyone that knew me and their brother messaged me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, texted me, "Have you heard about 5 Feet Apart?" Yes. I literally had to go on Facebook at one point and go, as the resident CFer in apparently most of your lives, yes, I've heard about 5 Feet Apart, so please stop asking me if I've heard about 5 Feet Apart, because I have. It was to the point where I was getting messages constantly, and it was like, okay, I appreciate you guys looking out and telling me about it. Yes, I've heard about it. I've been hearing about it for a year now. That being said, let's jump into the book review itself, and then kind of I'll go into the whole how I feel about it all as a CFer. 5 Feet Apart, like I said, is a story about a boy and a girl who fall in love. And they both have CF. Now, if you know anything about CF, or if you've read the book, their whole rule in the book, and while it's technically not untrue, I just did a double negative, is you can't get within 6 feet of a CFer. Technically speaking, you shouldn't be in the same room as another CFer. You should never, ever, ever be near any CFers. I didn't hear about the 6-foot rule until this was a thing, because I grew up from my doctors always just being like, stay away from CFers. And the reasoning for that is because having CF, there's no 2 same kinds of CF. Everyone who has CF has different types. You have 2 CF genes, one of which is one of like a dozen, I think, somewhere around that, and then one of that is one of thousands. So you could easily make another CFer sicker, or they could easily make you sicker to the point of death, you know? So like your whole life as a CFer, you're just kind of told stay away from other CFers, which can be really, really hard because they're the people that know what you're going through the most, you know? Like family will understand to an extent, same with friends, but the only ones that truly know what you're going through, you can't be in the same room as. And that can be a lot of the reason a lot of CFers have anxiety and depression, because they do. And that's one of the reasons, is because we never truly have anyone in our lives physically that understands. Like, yeah, we can be friends over social media, but if you've been around for a while, then earlier this summer, I posted a video. It was one of my California vlogs when I was in California for the weekend, visiting for my cousin's wedding. I met a CFer for the first time at his wedding, actually, which was crazy. Her name was Kelly, which I thought was hilarious since I'm Kelsey. But she was a few years post-transplant, a few years older than me, and her lung function, she's told me, was 117%. My best day, when I'm at my peak healthiest, my lung function's at 44%. It's kind of mind-blowing. But anyways, you have Stella and Will, and even before seeing Cole Sprouse play Will, you fall in love with him. You know, I was reading this and already knowing who was playing who, and as I was reading this, and I was like, this is Cole Sprouse. This role was written for Cole Sprouse, because it was. Maybe. I don't actually know if it was, but it seemingly felt like it was. But you got the girl who's always done everything to a T, never, maybe not never, but never misses medication, never misses therapy, never does anything wrong. And then you got the one kid who's so sick that he's like, what's the point? I'm gonna die anyways, let me live. And they teach each other a lot. And I think that's kind of what the takeaway is from this book, is that we can learn from other people. At least that's what I take away from this. I thought it's a really good story, if you ask me. Also, look at this cover art. It's so pretty. I just want to die. Like, if anything's ever made me feel good about having really crappy lungs, it's this picture right here. Because this is so pretty. I just want my wall to be this. Just the entirety of my wall. So the whole kind of premise of the book is they fall in love, but they're like, oh no, we can't be around each other. And then Stella gets to the point of frustration where she's like, I've given up a lot because of my CF. My CF has taken a lot from me, so I'm gonna take back one thing. I'm gonna take back 1 foot, which is why it's called 5 feet apart, even though the rule is 6 feet apart. And the reason for the rule is because a cough can travel 6 feet. Now, for being really technical, germs are in the air constantly, and if I breathe out germs, someone in the same room, whether they're 6 feet apart or not, are probably going to get those germs. Ergo, why CFers should never really be in the same room as each other. Case in point. And I don't want to give any spoilers if you haven't seen this or read this, but if you haven't, I definitely recommend both the book and the movie. They're both really, really good. The book made me cry my eyes out, and I think because of that, I only teared up at the movie. I was also in public and with someone who'd never seen me cry before, so I didn't want to cry in front of her, having never cried before. Brie, if you're watching this, I love you. But yeah, super good. Totally recommend it. I love it. As a YA writer and consumer, amazing. Now, as a CFer, it was confusing, actually, at points. Mostly because, like I said, up until a couple months ago, I'd never met another CFer. I've never talked, really, to other CFers. So the only point of view for CF I've ever had was my own. And even knowing that everyone experienced CF differently, it was weird to me because for me, I've never had stomach tubes. I've never had surgery. If I ever get put under with anesthesia, it was to put a PICC line in, which is just a tube that goes from right around your arm here into your chest cavity to deliver antibiotics. It lasts longer than an IV, but it's not as, permanent as a port. So here's my lovely port scar. Gotta love that. So it was confusing, reading all of this and going, I've never heard of this 6 foot rule. What do you mean CFers have to have G tubes? Like, I've known that these were things, sort of. Like, when I was little, I was teeny tiny. Like, until I was in middle school, actually, until I was like an 8th grader, 9th grader, I was minuscule to the point where, like, I have a memory of being like 9 years old and my cousin, who's a year older than me, so he was like 10 at the time, coming up to me and going, do you have anorexia? Little 9-year-old Kelsey didn't know what anorexia was. And then my aunt freaking out going, Derek, you can't just ask people if they have anorexia. Because I was tiny. I was for years. I had this really weird mentality in middle school that if you were over 100 pounds, you were fat. I don't know why. Not because people told me that people were fat if they were over 100 pounds, just because I was like 97 pounds. So then and me being me, I like to be annoying and a jerk. So I'm like, anyone who's over 100 pounds is fat. That's not true. I'm like 145 pounds now. That's just not true. Little middle school Kelsey was wrong for some reason. I don't even, like I said, don't know where that mentality came from. She was crazy. But so reading a bunch of this, it was confusing because I was like, I've never heard of these things, like the B cepacia, which Will has and why he can't get a lung transplant. I'd never heard of that. I didn't know you could not be viable for a lung transplant. Fun fact. There are 2 bugs, germs, illnesses, whatever you want to call them, that you can have as a CFer that makes you non-viable for a lung transplant. And B cepacia is one of them. I can't remember the full name because it's long and my doctor's only said it to me once. But yeah, so like these were things that I was like, I don't know how to feel about this. This all feels wrong. This is confusing to me. And like, while I love that, CF is becoming this and is going to be part of this mainstream thing, I don't want people to be taught wrong. And for the most part, they weren't. I was just confused, which is really weird. Like I said, everyone's going to experience it differently. So just because I had never experienced these things as a CFer didn't mean that they weren't true. You know, lots of people get sicker quicker or not as sick as quickly. Like, the fact that I'm 22 and at 40-something percentage can be seen as really good or really bad, depending on who you ask. So it's hard for me to say as a CFer whether this book was wrong or not. At first I thought it was, because I just didn't know. And then after talking to my doctor, I realized it's not necessarily wrong. It was interesting. But as both a YA writer and reader and a CFer, I love this book and the movie, and I full-heartedly recommend it if you haven't watched it. Plus, Cole Sprouse, I mean, and Haley Lou Richardson. Both of them. We love them. But that'll be it for this video. If you enjoyed what you saw, make sure to give me a like, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And that'll be it. See you next time. Later, book nerds.